Joining me to discuss This Week in Education, we're joined by Kevin Richert of Idaho Education News and Kay Thornbrew of the Coeur d'Alene Press. Kevin, Kay, thanks for joining us. Let's start with education savings accounts. Kevin, that was a lot of testimony over the last 2 days. What stood out the most to you?
Well, I think on the one hand, you look at this and you say that this was an anticlimactic, predictable hearing because 5 of the 9 senators had already signed on as sponsors and co-sponsors, so we knew how the outcome was going to be. But a couple of things really stood out to me. First of all, you heard Chairman Dave Lent vote against the bill in committee, and he kind of tipped off that maybe there are other education savings accounts or school choice bills in the hopper that might not go as far as this bill, which went too far for his liking. So kind of a tip off that this debate is going to be a long debate and that there's stuff going on behind the scenes. But I was struck too, as we sat there for the 6 hours of listening to public testimony, about the scope of what we heard. We heard from folks all over the state, and I think this was a time where that remote testimony really paid dividends. We heard from folks from all over the state, and really some thoughtful, interesting comments about neighborhood schools, the importance of local schools, the role of local schools, and how people define education. I thought it was a really interesting debate.
Definitely, and the support and opposition didn't map neatly onto whether they were speaking from a city like Coeur d'Alene or Idaho Falls or a small town like Genesee or Viola.
And we heard voices from all over the state. We heard from folks from Post Falls all the way to Idaho Falls. It was a good discussion.
And Kay, I want to bring you into the conversation now. You covered a town hall meeting up in Coeur d'Alene in early February, and ESAs were a big topic up there. Can you tell me about what you heard from the constituents in Kootenai County?
Yes, it was a very well-attended town hall meeting. About 200 folks turned up, and by far the most asked topic was about ESAs. Most of the commentary from the audience was in support of this concept, and the 10 legislators who were in attendance expressed universal support for this idea.
All right. Well, the State House isn't the only education topic in the news this week. North Idaho College, again up in Kootenai County, received a letter last Thursday from its accrediting body, the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities. That letter directs the community college to show concrete evidence that it is taking steps to address the commission's concerns about financial stability, governance, turbulence in the last couple of years. Kevin, briefly remind us, what is accreditation? What does it mean for a community college?
It means a lot to students. What it means to students is their credits are, if they want to move from one college to another and you want to have your credits honored by another institution, you have to be going to a college that's accredited. So for an NIC student, whether they're seeking an associate's degree and hoping to go on to 4-year school, or whether they're a dual credit student hoping to take credits from their high school career into college, they have to be going to an accredited school. So that's what's critically important for students. And also, students who want to get an opportunity scholarship or a state scholarship, they have to be going to an accredited school. So for students, this is a big deal.
And Kay, you, I believe, broke the story on this show cause letter. Can you explain to me what exactly this letter signifies is the next step in this accreditation process?
This show cause letter or sanction came little more than 2 months after a warning that it could be coming. It is the last step before loss of accreditation before North Idaho College. And at this point, NIC has until March 13th to submit a report to the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, essentially explaining and outlining why it should not have its accreditation terminated. At that point, that report is going to be followed by a site visit from the NWCCU, and we should expect to hear a decision sometime in June.
And for context here, the last time that we had you on the show was back in November, just after the last Board of Trustee elections. So there's a lot that has happened up there since we last talked to you. Remind us how the trustee elections went and what has happened in the months since then.
Right. Well, we had 3 new trustees join the board. This election kind of flipped the balance of power to 3 trustees on one side, 2 trustees on the other side. Since then, we have seen a lot of changes at NIC. The newly hired permanent president, Nick Swain, has been placed on administrative leave, not for any disciplinary reason, but so that the college's new attorney can investigate a change to his contract that occurred in August after his hiring. He has since sued to be reinstated. There is an additional lawsuit pending from a community member here in Coeur d'Alene against the Board of Trustees, accusing malfeasance and fraud. And all of this has culminated in that additional warning from the NWCCU and now that sanction of show cause.
Right. Kevin, let's go back to you. All of these factors compounding are kind of what NWCCU is pointing to that is making them concerned about the state of the college.
I was struck by two things last week. I was struck by the tone of the letter from NWCCU. Very, very stern tone here. Basically, the commission is saying, we don't think the college is taking this matter seriously enough. We don't think that they're really taking seriously the threat to accreditation. And then I was struck by the response that we saw from the interim president, Gregory South, just the next day, saying, we're running out of second chances here as a community and as a board of trustees. We have to get our act together, and we have to get it together here in the next few months. Very different tone from him than we heard just last month when he was before the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee down here in Boise at the State House, where he basically said, we'll have time to respond. This is a long process. He basically told me afterwards, if you're a student right now at NIC, you have nothing to worry about because you will have your associate's degree in place before this accreditation could ever be pulled. Very different tone, very much more of a sense of urgency from him.
And Kay, remind us, the trustees up there, remind us what their stance toward the accreditation issue has been, and tell us if that's changed at all since this letter was received.
Right. 3 of the trustees on the NIC board, Todd Banducci, board chair Greg McKenzie, and newly elected trustee Mike Wagner, have really consistently maintained that NIC's accreditation is not in danger. It's never been in danger. That this talk about accreditation and those concerns were kind of campaign rhetoric leading up toward the election. Since the sanction from the NWCCU, they have not issued any type of statement. They have not addressed this letter specifically as trustees in any way.
Okay. And your reporting said that interim President South, however, had met with representatives from NWCCU. How did that conversation go?
It's unclear to us, kind of from as outside observers, how that conversation went. NWCCU did meet with interim President Greg South, as well as with 2 NIC trustees and some additional members of the NIC administration. What we know is that coming out of that meeting, Greg South did put the word out to the community, letting them know that this visit had occurred and letting them know essentially that NWCCU does not want to terminate NIC's accreditation and is willing to work with the college to get things on the right track.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Kay Thornbrew from the Coeur d'Alene Press, Kevin Richer, Idaho Education News, thanks for joining us. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.